The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. It's an Austin FC podcast, and this week we'll discuss Austin's 2-2 draw at home against San Jose. Then we'll also be joined by MLS Season Pass's Max Bretos to preview the upcoming match in Portland over the weekend. And then we'll also cover a few other pieces of Austin FC news. My name is Landon Cottam, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Bentley. I'm coming to you from a Hilton downtown in Minneapolis. I'm obviously not exactly sure where I am or why
Sure,
I'm
it's
here,
not a double tree?
No, it's a red brick. Yeah, I think it's the classic Hilton downtown. There are like 3 other Hiltons around, but this is the one.
Did you say what city? You're in Minneapolis?
I'm in Minneapolis, yes. I at a conference talking about social responsibility and all the things that I do. So it's like, for those of you that watch the YouTube, I believe that I've almost had a different background. Like every week we've done an interview because I'm in a different hotel. And I'm looking forward to being back in Austin again as soon as tomorrow. I was going to ask you, so Friday night you didn't have the chance to watch the game because you were at something else.
That's right.
I want you to talk about, and then maybe you'll get into it. But I want to hear about how like Mike honed Peppa somehow in the show.
Yeah, so we went out to the Curtain Theater, which is, I had heard about this but had never been, but it is a replica Globe Theater, like where like Shakespeare plays in England were originally shown. It's a replica of that, all wood, like this beautiful, like circular, small theater. And Mike and Steph Craniola from Swoon Tower were in a production of A Winter's Tale out there. And so there are several Austin FC fans and like Swoon Tower fans and just like friends of theirs who were all going to go out on that same night because it was a night that Austin didn't have a home game. Or like the game wasn't during the show where people could go. And so there's probably like 15 or 20 people out there that were just Austin FC folks going to see Shakespeare. I have to admit that I had never seen any Shakespeare, period. I had never read Shakespeare, period. And I'm afraid by saying this that like the police are going to come and take away my high school diploma.
The culture police are out to get you. Yeah.
Just the regular police, because I don't know if this is true, but I kind of always thought that like you had to learn that kind of stuff to graduate high school. And there was like this weird turnover of English teachers where I had one my freshman year and then they left, and then a different one my sophomore year and then they left. And by the time I was a senior, like nobody knew what was going on or who taught what the year before. And I just never read Shakespeare, never saw Shakespeare. And so I was going into it expecting not to understand anything and frankly, not to really enjoy it because I didn't understand anything, but it was great. It was really, really good. And I say this earnestly, Mike and Steph stole the show. Neither of them were roles that I think you would consider leads. They were kind of secondary characters as far as like the billing goes, but as far as performances go and kind of like the weight of the show, I think Steph had the best dramatic performance, and then Mike, which will surprise nobody, had the best comedic performance.
Had the Micah's performance? Yeah.
Yeah, the Micah's performance. And he said, so the second half of the show, it's like a small theater where like people will play multiple roles often. And he had one role in the first half and a different role in the second half. In the second half, he was like a merry prankster and had large stretches of the show where it was just him on stage, like talking direct, like breaking the fourth wall and talking to the audience. And it was like the best thing I've ever seen. And Mike was like, this is the easiest role I've ever played, where I just like make jokes and flirt with everybody. And it's like, it was so good. I had a blast. So I think their run is over, but I think they're going to be doing another run in the fall. And hopefully Mike and Steph will be involved in that one too, but it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So wait, let's see the Peppas thing. Like I read on Twitter that he did it at some point.
Yeah. As a merry prankster, he was like, just like doing like jolly humming where he's like, oh, I'm about to like steal somebody's money, or I just stole somebody's money, or I just heard some news that's like, I'm going to be able to like like scam somebody or something, and he would just like hum a little tune. And as he skipped off stage, he had been humming another tune before and singing, and then as he skipped off stage, he started humming Peppas. And got a big laugh out of the Little Verde section there.
I love it. Love it. I heard that. Yeah, I heard that. I was at after I went to the game, I went to an event that same night on Saturday, and Peppas broke out, and like the whole place, which had a lot of Austin FC fans in, just went crazy. Like, it's a banger. It's amazing.
All right. Well, should we get into Austin FC news?
Yeah, let's get into the news. Like, just generally, I think people could tell we're probably in a better mood than we have been the last couple weeks, and we could talk about why we're not quite as frustrated. But let's go with the news first. So, first bit of news is Jean Kolmanich went to the season-ending injury list. He had surgery performed this week. And Landon, you had a little bit of a question or take on that, given when he was hurt, why we're just now reading about the surgery.
Yeah, and this is a little bit from personal experience and then just from things I've heard before. But sometimes I know that at times they'll want to wait because there can be some swelling or something that could make the surgery more difficult. But also, I know in my case, I tore my ACL in high school playing football, and I completely tore my ACL, partially tore my MCL, and the MCL didn't need surgery, but they decided to wait 6 weeks and have me do rehab on my MCL for 6 weeks before doing that surgery, so that I would essentially be rehabbing one thing at a time and not trying to do both at once. And so I think that's the reason. That could be one of the reasons why you would wait a couple of weeks to do that surgery, just to make the surgery go smoother, make recovery a higher chance of being successful and a bit easier for the patient. But that's probably something in line with one of those things would be why they waited for the procedure.
And I guess the piece of commentary I had was that the press release said that Jean Kolmanich had successful surgery in his ACL. And I'm like, unless somebody died during surgery, when have we ever got a piece of news that was anything other than the surgery was successful? So, like,
press release, Austin FC, Jean Kolmanich undergoes ACL surgery, and it did not go well.
Yeah. So I don't get that. Let's talk about maybe just the news behind it. So he was also placed on the season-ending injury list after that, which to this point, Austin had 20 of 20 senior roster spots open. So what that does do is open up one senior roster spot. I think there was some speculation that would be an international spot, but he got his green card last year, maybe in 2021. So yeah, he was not occupying an international spot. So that is not open.
What do we know about the money though? Like, do we get money opened up for him? I don't remember. We were pretty learned in this in 2021.
Yeah,
I feel like,
I know.
But less so.
We don't have to worry so much about it. Yeah. So what the rule is on the season-ending injury list is that Austin does get the relief to replace him at the salary budget charge. The salary budget charge, the replacement player, may not be more than the player suffered the season-ending injury list, except for like if Austin has it available. It's like maybe Austin has budget space available and it doesn't matter, but they get relief up to the point of Jean's charge, which is a little bit interesting
as U22.
Because he's a U22 and it's not like his full salary, but it's whatever his U22 roster charge is, because it's the budget charge, not the salary.
Yeah, so his real salary is $300K, and so his budget hit, I can't remember what U20, it's either 200 or 250, and so I think it's 200, and so it's not that big of a difference. So I mean, for a team like Austin who did have all the spots full, like the roster spot is as big as anything, but if we don't have any money to really bring anybody else in, like it's going to be tough to really replace him right now, but maybe in the summer window.
Yeah, I think the summer window is the biggest opportunity to do any of that. And that's also because Austin still has this in-season buyout that we could do. There's a guy who was photographed today, like laying by the pool, very handsome and shirtless, who seems to be very surplus to requirements. That would seem to be a good candidate for that. But it does open up a little bit of flexibility when the summer window opens for us to be able to address some of the club's needs, although there's not like a huge move that's going to come in no matter what.
Yeah. Let's get into the US Open Cup. We know we've been kind of in the dark in knowing that we would play an Open Cup match at some point in this week of this season, but we have the details now.
Yeah. So this is the round of 32. So round Austin enters in because of how Austin finished last year. there's a geographical grouping of 4 teams that Austin could compete against. So it was New Mexico United, Houston Dynamo, and Sporting KC. So 2 of the 3 teams were Major League Soccer clubs. Did you have a preference for which one of these teams that Austin would play against?
I mean, I was going for like Austin needs a win right now. we need all the help we can get, and so I was hoping for USL at home. Like that's I heard a stat recently. It's like if an MLS team, this is in the Open Cup, if an MLS team goes away to a USL team, they have like a 40 some odd % chance of winning. The USL team does, which is like not far from 50-50, right? And Austin learned that the hard way last year.
Yeah, in San Antonio, for sure.
Yeah, if a USL team travels to the MLS team, I think it goes down to like 11% chance of winning. And so just speaking statistically, I know that we're not going to count these chickens before they hatch, but just statistically speaking, this gives us the best chance of winning is the USL team at home. That's what I wanted. I know some people wanted maybe a challenge or to go to a new stadium or something like that. I wanted the best chance of winning, and that's what we got.
Yeah, that's what we got. So it's New Mexico United at home, because it could also be on the 9th or the 10th. So we learned that on Wednesday, May 10th at 8 p.m., Austin will be hosting Mexico United at Q2. If you're a season ticket holder, these are included in they're included in your season ticket package, so you get all the things you normally get. I have not spent a lot of time watching or studying New Mexico, so I'll just say they're 9th in the West in USL Championship right now. They beat Phoenix Rising last week 2-1, which is how they got there. And we will try to do a more in-depth preview next week when leading up to the match when it actually happens. I think, did you watch them play?
I went back and watched that game after the draw and have some thoughts on it, but I'll save those all for next week.
Okay. So wait, okay. Beyond that, are you worried? Are you more or less worried after you watched it?
These may be words that come back to kick me in the butt next week, but I'm not that worried.
Okay. That's great. So we can just leave it there. You get into more detail. Then we also had Austin FC on Friday. Austin FC 2 played against Minnesota United FC 2. Austin continued their record of being undefeated. This time, I think what Austin had gone to penalties, got the point, and lost in penalty kicks twice. Is that right? Before?
Yeah, at least twice, if not more than that. But yeah, several times they've drawn, but still never lost.
So this time they drew and they picked up the victory. Penalty kicks. You didn't watch this because you were at the play. Like I ended up watching it. One of the big things is it was super delayed, right? Because the game was originally going to be at 8. They moved it up to 6, I think, to try to account for the bad weather people thought were going to roll in later in the evening. It ended up rolling in early, and I think the game ended up starting
8:30 or something like that.
8:30 or something like after it was originally supposed to start. So that was a factor. It was super windy. I feel like the wind had a big effect on a lot of the balls that Austin, and Minnesota were both trying to play. But Austin went down 1-0 in the second half. Ended up Emmanuel Johnson, who had a really strong match, scored to make it 1-1. And then Austin won in penalties on the 6th kick. I believe it was 3-3 through the first 5. Minnesota's misses were both guys hitting the post. And then Damian Loss came up big on a save on the 6th kick after not being great in PKs. But Austin FC2 continues to be, I think they're first in the West still on total points. I don't think they're in first in the West in points per game. Yeah.
So just going back to the US Open Cup thing again, Damian Loss is a guy who, even though he's not technically the second string keeper on the first team, because Matt Bersano has been the guy on the bench for those, I would not be surprised to see Damian Loss get the start in the US Open Cup match. I know that there's some politics and some man management stuff going into that. Like maybe Wolf feels like he has to give Bersano a game somewhere, because where else is he going to get minutes ever? But as far as merit goes, we've seen Bersano in this league, and we've seen what Damian Loss has been able to do in Next Pro so far. I think on merit alone, I would like to see Damian Loss get a run out, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not.
Well, he's young. He's 10 years younger than Bersano. It's he's got a lot more long-term potential in terms of being a contributor. And now going back to Austin FC 2, and the guy I was kind of like talk trash about, we also got this quote from Josh this week about Amro Tarek seeing time maybe at center back for Austin FC 2. Like, do you like that idea? I do not.
No, and I think that so in the press conference, I feel like he said it less concretely than what was like the quote
was reported. Okay.
He did not say like he's definitely going to get those minutes. It was more like he maybe needs some more time before he sees time with the first team, but he didn't outright say that he's going to get time with the second team. But I honestly don't. Like, we're not trying to develop Amro Tarek, 30-year-old MLS veteran. Like,
right.
I'd rather Mazzaferro and Keller get those minutes. Even Chris Pinkham, I think, is the backup guy. I don't think he's played a minute so far. If we're going to give guys minutes, I'd rather it be those three.
Yeah, I think Mazzaferro, you mentioned this early on, but like Mazzaferro has looked really good. He looked really good in the Minnesota match too. Like, where if you watch those two guys and wanted to know which one was like a Generation Adidas guy, like, you wouldn't necessarily be able to determine which one was which. And again, against Minnesota, Mazzaferro looked great. I don't think he's actually wearing shin pads. Like, if you noticed that too, like, he's
wearing socks. Like the short socks with like
he's wearing the super short socks. Yeah. But
so I went up to the U17 match on Sunday and talking to some of the parents out there, parents of center backs, and asking about like training with these like next pro and first team guys and like who have been like their role models. They mentioned Mazzaferro. Like, Mazzaferro is a guy who's taking these young guys under their wing, and like at least parents are saying like, watch how this guy plays. And so I don't know what they're saying about Kip Keller, but they are saying like, learn from Sal. He'll teach you something.
Yeah, and I think he's, there's 3 or 4 guys who seem to have developed. I don't know. They seem to have a lot of promise where you can see them developing into MLS players. I know it's like hard because of the difference in quality between the two leagues to really like say that for sure. But I think if you look at him and David Rodriguez and Emmanuel Johnson a little bit, like there's some developable talent there, and he seems to be one that's really like shined in a way that I don't know that we would have known about other than him getting this regular time with Austin FC 2. So you mentioned that U17 match. I mean, other than talking to parents, do you have another report on that? They won. They beat St. Louis City on
4-1. Yeah,
4-1.
Sunday, 4-1. They did okay in the first half, and then a name that y'all have heard on the show before, Irvin Torres, is national team call-ups for both U.S. and Mexico. He'd been out for some personal reasons for a couple of weeks, and so he didn't start the match, but came on at halftime. And the way the match looked from the first half to the second half, this kid is unreal. Like, it's hard to say like when he's in there every game to say like how much of a difference he makes, but to see a half of a game with him not on the field and then a half of the game with him on the field, he's legit. He's very, very good. And I can't wait to see what he looks like over the next few years.
All right, well, let's take a break, I think, now, and let's talk about the San Jose match, which on the face of it, I don't know, 1-1 draw at home. It's not that great, but I think we're both way more encouraged than we have been in the past. So we can take a break and get into that.
Yeah, context is everything, Jeremiah. All right, hang tight. We'll be right back with more Moon Tower Soccer.
No one is around.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education.
You can go to FVF.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FVF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. Amplify's team lives and works in the community, making them the experts on how members can achieve their financial goals.
What makes Amplify different? No bank fees. Amplify is the first financial institution in Texas to put an end to bank fees. In 2022, Americans paid almost $8 billion in overdraft fees alone. Millennials pay an average of $336 a year in bank fees, which works out to 6 Austin FC game tickets per year per person, or 2 copies, or two of the Los Verdes jersey, I believe is how that works out. You paid none of those bank fees with Amplify Credit Union.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower. All right, we are back. We're going to talk about the San Jose game. So we mentioned on the last show that Austin had gone 5 games against San Jose in their existence, had not beaten them. We're now at number 6 and have still not beaten them. We talk about draws that feel like losses sometimes. I think in the grand scheme of things right now, not just based on the result, but based on some things we saw in this game, I came out of it feeling fairly positive. I don't know if that's the case for you.
Yeah, I did. And it was, for whatever reason, with what was going on that night, like when Austin went down, maybe the first time in a long time, because Austin trailed twice in this match, where I didn't feel like all hope was lost. And like there was a chance that Austin was going to rally. And if after Austin made it 2-2, like I felt like maybe the third goal was coming, and I haven't felt like that in a long time. Now, the other side of that is Austin still 11th in the West and still only picked up 2 points in April. So like it's objectively hard to be too excited about it. But I think we could go through kind of why we feel like it was a little bit different of a night than it has been otherwise. And including one widely maligned right winger who had a pretty good performance.
Yeah. So my wife, after the game, we got back to the house and she just looked at me and said, imagine last season saying that one of the high points of the season so far was a draw at home where Rodney Bretos started. And like the difference 6 months can do. But it's right. Like I feel okay about this game and also pretty positive about Rodney Bretos. We'll get into him a little bit later. Yeah. So we talked a little bit last week. Josh Wolf saying that like, yeah, we'll definitely see some changes this coming week. And we were kind of like racking our brains, like what does changes look like in this team with what's available? And so what we ended up seeing in the starting 11 was Brad Stuver in goal, but then Adam Lundvist in at left back, Bison in ring at center back still, Lima still at right back, Pereira and Valencia in the midfield. So Valencia, a bit of a surprise there. Then Rigoni playing on the left-hand side, Rodney Bretos playing on the right-hand side, Bretos being a surprise start there, Maxi Ruti still starting at the 9, and then Driussi. And so I think if, despite every pre-match lineup graphic from last year, and I think from this year they've been doing it as well, I think we actually lined up in a 4-2-3-1 in this game, which is a thing we haven't really seen much. So in the post-game press conference, Josh Wolf said, like someone asked about all these changes, and he said that he wanted Adam Lundvist, Rodney Bretos, and Johan Valencia to get minutes with the first team. We've got a lot of matches coming up, and so I like that thinking as like let's rotate some of these guys in a controlled manner where you can control it, and then later on, whenever you have to put some of those guys in, they're comfortable playing with the starters. They're comfortable playing with those guys around them instead of being forced to do it and it being a real pressure situation. It feels a bit more comfortable for them. And so I'm okay with that early in the season, especially when, and he mentioned this in the presser as well, that like some of these guys have come in and played well. So if the guys in front of them aren't playing that well, let's give these other guys a chance and give them a run out.
Yeah. And I thought the combination of Lundvist and Rigoni on the left was interesting. And like we saw Rigoni, I don't know, play different in attack than we probably have before. Like he looked more comfortable on that side than he has been. And he was more dangerous. And obviously he had a better result than he's had since he was in Austin. On that, so I feel like a lot of that worked out. And I mean, Rodney looked pretty good too. So it was a good set of moves. All things considered, objectively, like for the long term.
I think personnel wise, it worked out well, but I think like structurally and tactically, I think Josh Wolf deserves some credit here. We've criticized him quite a bit as of late, but I think he made some calculated moves and that worked out in this game and maybe showed some promise and things that can be built on. But it seemed like a simplified model from what we've been working on. And it was more complex by being more simple, like less prescriptive. And so by letting the guys be a bit more free to do what they want, it can be a bit more complicated and a bit less predictable. So we had like that straight back four, like we saw a lot of last year, where the fullbacks would not necessarily overlap. They would push up into kind of the midfield, but not any higher, and would be kind of a part of the buildup in that way. And then Rigoni and Redes were the kind of the high and wide players, but you would see them kind of float in and out of those channels. And then Driussi was in the center and was allowed to float around, still playing quite a bit higher and like a bit more like a true 10. Like he's never going to be your Emmanuel Reynoso, Lucho Acosta. Like he's not that kind of number 10. He's never going to be, but in this setup, he had the freedom to float to both sides of the field, and he wasn't displacing anybody when doing that. And when he did go over there, the guys knew where to move to kind of make space for him, or to kind of open up some space for themselves when he did that. And so, the flexibility is something I really liked. And instead of prescribing that attacking shape, like that 3-2-2-3 that we were seeing, we would see Rigoni like float inside to that channel more. And so when that space was there, I think Lundvist less so. Lundvist seemed a bit more hesitant to push forward, but at halftime when they subbed Gallagher on, he was willing to take that space and push up and overlap and do that. And we saw that on the other side, Driussi would float wide and Rodney would move it to the inside channel. And just that flexibility, that fluidity is something that I really liked and something that we haven't really seen. And so just that part of it is something that I thought was really encouraging, and I hope something that they can build on going forward.
Yeah, and a lot of that bore itself out the game stats. So Austin leads in possession, 55-45. Austin outshot San Jose 16-11. And Austin has been hoping for shots like a lot over the last month. So it's above their average over the last. It was above their average of last year, definitely above their average this year. Austin had more shots on target. We talked about how Austin hadn't had a match with more than one X goal in a long time. So it's 2.17 to 1 for whatever X goal means, as we know, but like it showed that it was a stronger performance overall. But I don't know. I would like your perspective on this, but they were a little bit leaky in defense in some ways. And do you think like the structure contributed to that, or those like individual mistakes that led to the two San Jose goals?
It seemed to just be errors. It was errors that led to them, right? So the first one comes in the 21st minute. Ring blocks a shot from about 9 yards out. It falls to Akapo, the right back, and Jackson Yueill is in the box, and he does a good job of kind of floating in between defenders, making them make a decision. And Lundvist sees Christian Espinosa out on the wing, one of their most dangerous players, and he cheats out to kind of like premeditate a pass out to Espinosa instead of like staying narrow and blocking off that pass to Yueill. Akapo notices and slips the ball into Yueill, into that space into the box, and he's able to turn and put in a really nice shot far post. And like,
it was a good finish too. For sure.
Really good finish, but like Austin shouldn't have let him get the ball in that spot. And so it's a tough thing to fault Lundvist for, because like, their most dangerous players out on the wing, and maybe he's going to get a pass, but like that's what really good defenders do, is make those decisions and make the right decisions. And he made the wrong one in that case.
Yeah, I think the first Austin goal is, I believe, one of the most random like things that we'll ever talk about or type into this show, given how they've done. But this is an Emiliano Rigoni goal, assisted by Roddy Redes and Danny Pereira, but like primary assist to Roddy Redes. So tell everybody how that went.
Yeah, so this one comes from, it starts with a long ball to Rigoni, which he's running in behind. I don't remember who plays the ball to him, but it ends up getting headed out for a throw in. Austin gets the ball thrown in before San Jose gets their defense set up completely. And Danny Pereira finds the ball. We have 4 guys in the box. And so Danny Pereira looks up, sees 4 guys in the box. Their defense isn't set. So he floats a long ball into the far side of the box, finds Rodney Redes, jumps up, heads it back across the 6-yard box. And when Rigoni sees that ball going far side, he does exactly what he's supposed to do in this moment, which he like kind of circles back around and is like predicting that ball kind of falling back across the 6. And the ball falls right to him, hits the ball, hits it a little high. Made me a little nervous. Upon replay, I think it was safe the whole time, but it's like, let's hit the back of the net instead of the top of the net whenever you're 2 yards out.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of movement that we saw from Rigoni in those first few games that like gave us hope, right? Like he was getting into good spots, was making good moves, and just like wasn't finishing things. And then that kind of disappeared. So to see that kind of thing come back in this game was really encouraging. I wanted to ask about, I saw some discussion online about his celebration afterwards. Did you see the pictures of the celebration, and do you have any thoughts about it?
I saw the celebration live, and I saw the pictures of it, and I feel like people are just searching for controversy in that. Like I there was somebody's like, oh, this is so disrespectful to the fans or whatever. It's like, I mean, the guy's played a long time, but scored a lot of goals. Like, it's do whatever. Like, it did not bother me at all.
If you see just the still photo of him with like a serious face and his hands out, I think you could interpret it as like, what do you want from me? Like, I just scored. What do you want from me? But if you watch the actual replay,
like the whole celebration,
he's got a big smile on his face. And then I think he's just doing a pose. Cause like, that's like, it's a cool thing that young people do or whatever. And it's like, I'm going to do some cool pose and look real serious. And then as soon as he was done, he got a big smile on his face again and hugged Rodney. And it's like, this is not the demeanor of a guy who's like trying to challenge anybody or like make a statement. He's trying to look cool for the cameras. And then he was done. And then he got a big goofy smile on his face again.
That's perfect. Yeah. It's just photography can tell a story for sure. So like this is their goal with the second San Jose goal. I feel like is just like what you should never leave Jeremy Ebobisse in a position where he can score a goal. Like I feel like I don't know a lot about soccer, but I feel like giving Jeremy Ebobisse the opportunity is going to bite you in the butt every single time.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one starts with a Danny Pereira giveaway in the midfield, which Danny Pereira overall, I think he had a couple of little missteps like this that could have led to dangerous moments, but overall he's been a star this year. He's been the only guy that you can look at game in and game out that like on this Austin team, you look, I think him and Brad Stuver and saying like, this guy's a game changer. Like he is something special and like adds something special to this team every game. And I think this was true in this game, apart from a couple of little mistakes. And so Danny tries to make a little touch pass into Zardes, who's checking back, but just doesn't put enough on it. And it falls straight to Jackson Ewell. Ewell kind of like spins around and holds it up, drops it back to somebody in the midfield, and they spring Espinosa wide because Gallagher at this point had pushed up really high in the buildup. And so when he loses the ball, that right side is wide open. And so whenever Ewell kind of circles around and passes it back to someone, they spring Espinosa wide. Danny Pereira is the one who has to get back and cover that right side. Espinosa drives all the way to the end line, chips it back across. And Ebobisse is kind of lurking in between Ring and Lima. And there's more guys inside and there's a guy outside. And for whatever reason, neither of them mark him. And he's just like hanging out by himself around the 6-yard box and jumps super high and gets good connection on it, but just clips the bar, goes down and into the goal. But it's late in the first half. There's a similar moment where Lundvist had pushed high and Danny gave the ball away cheaply again. And they sprung Espinosa in behind and they were unable to connect. But like, this is one of those moments, like Espinosa was kind of like hanging out in those areas, waiting for those moments. And so when you know that's the case and you have players that dangerous waiting for those moments, you have to be more careful. And Danny Pereira, this is still part of his growth where as good as he has been, he still has these little lapses that he needs to learn from and grow from.
Yeah. That is very true, but still, I think to your other point, he's still one of the better players on the night for Austin. Like still in terms of carrying the ball forward and making a difference, and I feel like he was pretty offensive in this one. And maybe it's because Valencia was there like to take mostly defensive responsibilities, but I think he had a good match. So luckily for Austin, that lead did not last for long because 3 minutes after the San Jose goal, Austin Sebastian Driussi gets off the goal scoring drought and draws us level at 2-2.
Yeah, so this one comes from a corner. And so this is a pattern that we see from Austin corners sometimes where they'll play a short corner turn and then play the ball to the fullback, kind of waiting at the top of the box. And it's Lima in this case. And I feel like oftentimes they try this and it's like a little disjointed and ends up not looking very good, but it came off pretty well this time where Lima receives the ball in that area, like, I don't know, 6 to 10 yards outside of the 18-yard box, like off to that corner. And then there's like a coordinated movement within the box as he's kicking it, which I think is also something that looked better in this game. Like in these crosses or set pieces, they looked a little more organized, a little bit more coordinated, where when a cross came in, there were 4 guys in the box all moving with intention, as opposed to like 2 guys just kind of standing there. And that's been the case so many times. And so like, I think that was improved in this game. But in this moment, there's 4 guys in the box all moving as soon as Lima hits the ball, like in coordination with it. And it finds Leo Väisänen on the backside. He maybe the San Jose players were arguing that he held himself up on Ebobisi's back. I mean, it's one of those things like his hands were on his back. I don't think he pushed down on him or like stopped him. One of those things where he's maybe like more stabilizing himself. So like, I think it could have been called a foul, but it's not egregious. I don't think you're going to like overturn the goal because of it. But Väisänen gets, I think he like hits his head and either hits off of his shoulder or off of Ebobisi's head, but is on goal after that. Marcinkowski gets like enough of a finger on it to push it onto the post. It hits off the inside of the post, falls into the middle of the goal. And the guy that we knew so well last year was Mr. Right Place, Right Time. Sebastian Driussi was in the right place at the right time and just punches it into an empty goal.
Yeah, it was good to see. And I feel like that ties into like my bigger observation of the game. It's like Austin just looked faster and more direct and more dangerous all throughout than they have almost the whole season. Maybe they did in St. Louis. Maybe they did versus St. Louis, but I feel like St. Louis, like the opportunities were different. But there was just like some different spark there, and the guys were in the right places, and the balls fell where they needed to, on offense. And it was just, it seemed like a little bit of a different performance than what we've seen.
Yeah, there's one more late chance in the 85th minute. It was in transition. Jossie Zardes was making a run on the backside as Danny Pereira plays a through ball to Rigoni. And so because Zardes makes that run on the backside and the defender stays with him, it opens up a ton of space in behind for Rigoni to stay on side. And Danny Pereira notices it, plays a nice through ball in. Rigoni's charging in on goal. He's got guys like closing him down, so he has to make a pretty quick decision. He tries to like put it on a postage stamp, like hits it really hard and tries to catch that upper corner on the near side. I really wish on this one he would have kept it lower because he had Zardes crashing on the backside, waiting for that rebound or for a cross. I don't know that he was open enough to like go straight for a cross in, but with 3 defenders and your striker all crashing in on the 6-yard box, like keep that shot low and you're close enough and can hit it hard enough that Marcinkowski it's very unlikely to catch it. And so if you can make him make a decision or make a defender make a decision, or maybe you get into that chaos zone in that 6-yard box in that area with people crashing in towards goal and make something happen. Instead, he goes for that accuracy shot, kicks it over, and nothing comes from it. So I like a good moment and like good intention and good forethought to do all of that. But then that decision making in that last moment, I'd like to see better from him there.
Yeah, that has been missing throughout the year for Austin in a lot of ways. And luckily it didn't manifest itself that much against San Jose, but overall strong performance-ish. Are there any players, like who should we talk about? I want to talk about Johan Valencia.
Yeah, I think we should talk about the changes, like the guys,
okay,
the
let's
new
talk about
guys.
The changes. Yeah.
Yeah. So Valencia, I mean, my take on him is that we've talked about this a lot. He's a guy who's like solid defensively, doesn't really lose the ball, keeps the ball pretty cleanly and plays neat little passes, but doesn't offer a lot going forward. I think that was true again in this game. but it felt more useful in this one, like a bit more practical. And I think his positioning was better. His counter pressing was a little bit better. This is a thing. So watching the U17s over the weekend, you could hear one of their coaches as they were attacking, they would lose the ball. And whenever, like at an Austin FC game, you can't hear Josh Wolf yelling on the field, but at these academy games, I can hear everything the coach is saying on the field. And so they would lose the ball and the coach would yell 5 seconds. And I don't know for sure, but what I'm pretty positive he's referring to is this thing that I think originates with Pep Guardiola's Barcelona teams, where I think it was the 6-second rule with them, but they had a rule that like, if you lost the ball for the next 6 seconds, you're going to run like a madman and try to win it back. If you don't win it back in 5 seconds, then you retreat back into your defensive shape. But for these 5 seconds, 6 seconds, you're going to work like crazy to win that ball back. And that's part of what made those Barcelona teams so good, is when they lost the ball, they would win it back immediately and just keep just punishing the teams they're playing against. And I feel like this is probably a thing Josh Wolf has wanted from his team often in the past. And I think we saw it pretty good in this game. And I think Johan Valencia was part of that, like being able to, like, when we lost the ball, swarming the opponents and trying to win that ball back really quickly.
Yeah, another change was Lundvist. I thought he was relatively invisible, and I think like Austin got better when Gallagher was on the field.
Yeah.
But to the big picture point, like he needs to see some meaningful minutes for the first team, and so like he didn't do any damage. Like I don't think he was additive to the experience, but like he didn't screw anything up.
Yeah, so in the first half, so as we said before, Austin was playing that flat back four with the fullbacks not overlapping. Instead of, like, we've been seeing them like that lopsided thing where one fullback goes all the way forward and the other one stays back. They were both pretty equal, staying like in the midfield. And San Jose was giving a lot of space along that left-hand flank. And so Rigoni would be high and they would be marking him. And then the central midfielders will all be pushed over to the ball on the other side. And they were leaving a lot of space for Lundvist there. And sometimes even like on into the attacking third. And you would see like Ring or Pereira look up and be like, if you're making the run there, I'd play a ball. And Lundvist was never making that run. He just like didn't look comfortable with what they were giving him. I imagine partially like what the game plan they came in with was different from what San Jose ended up giving them, and he just wasn't sure what to do. But yeah, I was happy to see the sub at halftime, to see Gallagher come in, because he is a guy who, when he sees that space, he's going to go into it. Like he's going to try to exploit it if he can, and he did, and we saw some dangerous moments come of that.
Yeah, and the other one was Roddy Redis, who I feel like, beyond just the assist he did, it was like the good Roddy Redis. We talked about last week, I think, the good Roddy Redis not being like a great player, but a guy that can run around and cause some trouble and occasionally like be in the right place and like create some offensive opportunities. And I feel like that's what we saw. Like he wasn't player of the match or anything, but it was a positive overall.
Yeah,
when Roddy was in the game.
He was a plus. And we said, as I was listening back, as I was editing a couple of weeks ago, like, I don't remember what game it was. Rodney came on and had a pretty good, like 15 minutes. And I, like, listening back, I felt like I was like a little bit disrespectful to Rodney. So I'll start by being disrespectful to him again, but there is like this margin of talent, like this like extra 5 to 10% that like the best players have, that can create magic out of nowhere. And like Rodney Redis, just like, we know now, he simply does not have that, but he looks like a guy who is like confident and knows what he's supposed to be doing and knows where he's supposed to be. And his movement and positioning in this game was really, really good. And so we would see, I was talking about that flexibility with Rigoni and Redis were not just like standing on the like on the sidelines the whole game, like we've seen the wingers do sometimes. As the ball would move wide, we would see them kind of shift into those inside channels and then make runs in behind through those inside channels. And Rodney did a really good job of like shifting in and out of those positions. He would drop in sometimes and receive the ball to feet to kind of like hold up and combine with people. He seemed to be in the right spot, right time every time and was making some really good, clever runs in behind and stretching the back line. And so like his crossing was pretty good. His on ball, like dribbling and stuff was okay, but he knew exactly what he was supposed to be doing and executed against that really confidently, which I think is not something we've seen from him in the past, but it's something that like the way this team is looking, like that's enough to get you in the first team right now.
Yeah, and hopefully it's something that he can build on. It is a very long. It's like when Roddy gets the ball just outside of the box, I always just think about him doing that like weird back and forth tap dance from last year, right? And like that does not happen, right? I mean, he's making movement with some intention and some purpose. Like maybe it's something to build off of. And you're right, he's never going to be a world beater, but he's like could be a serviceable MLS player, as a part of a rotation when you're playing as many games as Austin's going to play over the next few weeks.
Yes. Go ahead.
I was going to say it was good to see Julio available, and he warmed up. He never got in, but it's good to see him back and healthy enough to at least be considered for the squad.
Yeah. So Wolf was asked about this in the post-game press conference, and so Julio and Radovanovic were on the bench for this one, and Wolf said in the press conference that like there's a chance like maybe we'll see like what did he say? I have a note here. He mentioned changing the structures, quote, based on getting some center backs back into the fold, and quote, playing two forwards at times, not just when it's really needed. And so I feel like maybe he's hinting at like maybe we'll see like 3 center backs on the field at some point, or like have Maxi and Jossie play together. And these are like, if you just said that last year, I'd have been like, you're crazy. Josh Wolf is never going to do that. But if you're saying like, okay, we have like guys who are good enough to start in this team and you're not going to play them just because it doesn't fit this shape that's like not actually really working right now, like it sounds dumb, right? And so I really like that he's saying like, yeah, maybe we'll play with it. If Radovanovic, Julio Cascante are both ready to go and we want them and Alex Ring or whoever to play all at the same time, let's run 3 of them out. Let's put all 3 of them out on the field at the same time and see what happens. Or I like what Jossie can give, but I don't want to bench Maxi. Let's try running them out. Let's put them all both out there. And like at this point, like I could see last year him being stubborn because for the most part it was working and it's not really working this year. So like let's be a bit more flexible. Let's try some other stuff. Put your best players on the field and see what happens.
Yeah, and that gets back to like why this result was encouraging, even though in the table, like overall, it wasn't good. It's because you have players coming back. You have people who haven't necessarily looked confident in the attack, looking confident in the attack. You could see how the possibilities that this club might have going forward, and it's still super early, right? We've got 20 something games left, and Austin is only 2 points out of the playoff race. So like there's plenty of time to do different things differently, to experiment and get Diego healthy and see where it all goes. And I guess before we get off this game, like what I barely caught the end of the match thing with Driussi, other than like everybody was mad. There was like a pile of guys pushing each other.
Yeah. So I watched it back and Jackson Ewell comes in with a sliding tackle on the sideline super late in the game. I think it's like 90th minute. And Austin players come in and saying like, you don't make a tackle like that on my guy and get away with it. Upon the replay, it was not as serious of a tackle as I thought it was in real time. And I can imagine like from certain angles on the field, it looked like a pretty dirty tackle. And it really wasn't. I don't think Jackson Ewell came into it with any like malicious intent. The ball was between Driussi's legs and he ends up winning the ball and kicking it out. But there's like this swing at the end that looks like he's coming in like to kick Driussi at the end. And I don't think he was meaning to, but it looked like that. And so there's a big fight, a lot of like scuffling going on. Wolf said in the presser, like there may be more punish. Like he kind of expected there to be more punishment. And you kind of see this on the replay, but it looks like somebody touches Nick Lima's face in the little scuffle at some point. There was no card given for that. I think it ended up being a card to Jackson Ewell. And then maybe did Danny Pereira get a card there as well?
I I didn't see who that other card went to. I know there was another yellow, but don't remember who got it.
I think those two are the ones that were on the. Maybe someone else on the bench ended up getting one, but I will say we gave the refs, like, we've been critical in a couple of the last few games, as there's like a few questionable calls here, but I think overall this referee team did a really good job in this game. And in a matchup where it's going to be like pretty competitive, pretty physical, to let them play a little bit and not go to the books too quickly. I just feel like it's fair, like, if we're going to criticize them sometimes, to give them credit sometimes as well. And I think Guido, I can't remember his last name at the moment, but I think he did a good job in this game.
All right, I think let's move on from this game and let's talk about Portland with Max Bretos.
All right, hang tight. We'll be right back with Max Bretos.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Covert Auto Group. Covert Auto Group has been meeting the needs of local car buyers for 114 years because of their service, financial expertise, and support after the sale. So I went back and looked at what happened in 1909, which is the same time that Covert Auto Group was founded. And this was when William Howard Taft took office, who's both known as the president who was too big to fit in the White House bathtub and apparently got stuck and had to have 4 people take him out. And probably more positively, is the only person who's ever been both president and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, which is probably how his family wants to remember him.
And I'm sure if he had lived in Austin at the time, he would have bought his Model T Ford from Covert Auto Group.
Absolutely.
In addition to supporting car buyers like President Taft, Covert's an important part of the soccer community. If you're in the market for a new or used vehicle, be sure to check out covertauto.com.
And Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. Thanks to Sage Wilson Realty, we'll be giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match. So fill out the form in the show notes to enter for your chance to win.
Again, this is made possible by Sage Wilson Realty. If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Check them out online at sagewilson.com. All right, our guest today is one of the preeminent voices in soccer in North America. He has worked at places like ESPN and Fox Sports in the past, spent the last 5 seasons doing play-by-play and creating content for LAFC, and is now a play-by-play announcer for MLS Season Pass. It is Max Bretos. Max, thanks for joining us, man.
Oh, that's a lot. That felt good. I go, yeah, man. I've clocked in there, so it's good. Great to be with you guys.
Yeah. So I'm a person who there's some people who give nicknames or like shorten people's names. I'm a person who has the instinct to lengthen people's names or to call them by their more formal names. And so I was looking at your name, Max, and I was like, what is his full name? And I looked it up, and it is like an all-time Maximiliano. I think that is like like a top tier name in names in the world.
It took me about till at the age of 16 before I could spell it correctly. There's a lot of I's. So it's true. And I'd write there, I can't even spell my own name because it's you. And then when you write it down, I remember I had driver's licenses where I forgot to put an I in because there's 3 of them. And then it caused problems. So yeah, I actually have 4 middle names too. It's crazy. And my brother and sister, we all have these really long names, but they're fun at parties to kind of share.
You've always been Max, though.
Max, yes.
All
There's
right,
a lot of Maxes now. When I was a kid, there weren't Maxes. It was a name you gave your dog. So everyone's calling their kids Max now, which is great because we're a fraternity. We're connected.
My favorite cat was named Max.
Exactly. And I don't want to insult cats or dogs, but their brains are a little smaller than us. You can't call them Maximiliano. Call them Max so that they can understand. I'm not shitting light on it, but it just makes sense. All animals, really. Shorter, the better.
Maybe a Maxi or something like that. But,
Maxi. That's my son's name. That's because he's a Maxi.
Oh, nice.
Maxi. And actually, most of the, I think some of these Argentinian players like Maxi Rodriguez and Maximiliano Urruti.
Yeah.
By Maxi. So I should be Maxi, but it's just Max.
So you were saying that you've been having weird audio stuff all day. Jeremiah is once again, I think this is like 5 out of 6 of these that he's done from a hotel room this season. I had internet outages in my neighborhood, so I'm back in my office right now. So we're all kind of scrambling. You've been traveling a lot for work, for your work with MLS Season Pass on Apple TV, working with Brian Dunseth, who I don't know what your relationship with him was in the past, but he's a guy who I didn't get to see his work a lot. But whenever Austin would play RSL, and I get to watch a rewatch on ESPN Plus of his games or just watching random games here and there, he's a guy whose work I really like. So, what has it been like working with Brian and just the Apple TV experience in general?
I mean, we kind of disguise it, but we can't stand each other.
He seems like a hard guy to get along with.
He's awful. He has body odor. He rolls in at the last minute, right before kickoff. Very unprofessional. Brian is. I've known Brian a long time. He actually, I think he did his first soccer broadcast with me when I was at Fox Soccer Channel. And I guess when they announced the pairings and I heard it was Brian, we both texted each other and had a great chat because it was very comfortable. And I would have looked forward to working with anyone, but working with Brian made the transition very easy because we've worked so much in the past and we're friends. We know each other's families and we spend a lot of times on this road and have some good memories. So it's been very easy and it's to start this next chapter with him. I mean, he picks me up at the airport. He picks me up at the hotel sometimes when I'm doing a Salt Lake game, and generally we'll have dinners together. And it's very easy. So I really appreciate Brian. Hope he doesn't hear this because he'll probably take it the wrong way. But it's been very nice.
So you're on the call with Brian for Austin at Portland this weekend. Let's talk a little bit about the Timbers. I picked them probably entirely too high in our little like MLS team draft because I believe that future success is a prediction, like past success is a prediction of future success. And it's not been quite that way for them. But so there's like, I think Evander, the Brazilian attacking player they've signed, is starting to find his feet, looks really good. Diego Chara's 37 and still kicking. And then, but a lot of that, other than that, it's like, I feel like guys are starting to slow down. Like who does Austin need to pay attention to? And sort of who are your highlights and star players for Portland?
Well, I'm excited to do Austin this weekend. This will be my first Austin FC game for Apple TV. This is going to be my fourth Portland game, so I have a better idea of what to expect. And I mean, a lot was put on Evander when he came in here. He was their record signing. He has all the credentials, but it just didn't click for him. And watching their game, maybe their best result going to St. Louis and getting a victory, where Jimmy Chara, pardon me, who got injured in the first week of the season, is back and he scored. They've had a lot of injuries up front. Different guys playing in the attack role. Yaroslav Niazgoda. You had who is the Brazilian guy whose name is
Nathan Fogassa.
Nathan Fogassa, who has been, to me, although he didn't get off the bench this week, to me, in that first stretch of season games where they're struggling, he was maybe their best player. He was just like a jolt of energy and very good. But then they needed Dairon Asprilla. They waited for him to come back. He eventually did come back. I don't think he was playing this weekend. And then with the Chara, and the key was Evander. They needed Evander to start playing. He's starting to show it. He got a goal. It was a penalty. But I think even what I saw, you could see that he's settling in a bit. It's such a crazy, and Austin knows this too. You invest in these DPs and guys that that have to deliver for you. They have to provide the star power. They got to provide the goals or whatever they do. And Evander's that. I mean, he's going to come in. He's going to take every set piece. He's going to get this attack going. And I think that's the guy that you hope, if you're Austin, doesn't get into that groove on Saturday, which I'm expecting it to happen for Evander. So I think that's a guy that you need to keep an eye. Frank Boley's been a breath of fresh air. He scored a big goal for them in Dallas, a game I did call, and now he's also in the starting sweepstakes. I would say Evander number one, but the right side, Juan David Mosquera, who, based on all accounts, getting a lot of interest from European clubs. He's an under-22 initiative. He's been great all season. He's been called up to the Colombian squad. Granted, it was that January camp. And then Santi Moreno, who sometimes on that right side too. That's where, if those guys can have some dominance coming up the right, Portland will have success. But they were getting healthy, and then they got less healthy. But they're definitely better off now than they were at the beginning of the season and putting some good results together as a result.
So going back in the history of this matchup, There were 12 goals in the first 3 games. Most of those going to Austin, thankfully. But then the last 2 games in the matchup played out a bit more how you thought they would, especially them being last season, with Austin controlling more of the ball, Portland kind of doing what they do, sitting a little bit deeper and trying to catch Austin on the counter or with set pieces, and it worked for them. It was successful. How do you think Josh Wolf should approach this game, knowing that that is a thing that Portland are good at and like to do in certain situations? Do you think Portland will try that being at home? And do you think Josh Wolf will be flexible enough to maybe try to counter it, or is he just going to stick to his guns and try to play their game and do what they do?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think when you're Austin, you figure anytime you go on the road, you're going to have a matchup that is going to maybe be a little more conservative on your end. But I think this is an opportunity for Austin to stretch their legs out a bit, possess a little bit more, see if they can get Sebastian Driussi going. Obviously, I know Austin's had injury issues as well, which has forced a lot of pretty significant adjustments in their 11. You just got to I think Austin can be aggressive without taking too many risks. If we see like their fullbacks getting up and that space starts opening up behind them, it could be a problem, and Portland will be ready to pounce. But you know what you're going to get from Portland. I think it's going to be a very. I think it will be more on the aggressive side for Austin if it's allowed to do it. They have some of the horses when fully fit. Granted, that may not be the case, but they just got to be careful with the mistakes, as everyone does. But I think if Portland's going to lay some traps, just see where they are and kind of push forward. And Austin is Portland has not had the great home form this season that they've had. Granted, they had that great win over Seattle, and then it looks like they're getting better. But they have dropped some points along the way, so I think there's an opportunity there for Austin to get after it a bit.
Yeah, and Portland's been fairly leaky defensively too, right? I think they're second in the West in goals allowed. Like, what do you attribute that to? And is that something Austin can take advantage of, or does that come back to sort of the health and maybe they're just like they'll solve that through having people on the field?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, they always certainly at the beginning they gave 5 goals to Atlanta, the 3-2 game to LAFC. I still like their defensive effort. I mean, they've had some issues with Ivicic was injured, and then David Bingham came in and he got injured. So I'm not putting it on the goalkeeper, but they really haven't had a clear number one. Zach McGraw. I mean, I like the personnel defensively. Zuparic is a guy who's he's been there, done that, and Zach McGraw to me one of the better young defenders that Portland's been able to develop, and I liked them, and they just. They've made some mistakes in some of these games, and that's kind of I think where they've kind of gone awry. But to me it feels like they're trending in the right direction. They have they should get a good defensive record going, and I think we're in the midst of that as well with what we've seen. Although I would tend to think that defensively they're going to be pretty rigid. I like the personnel; they just got to get a little deeper. They got to get a little more depth in certain positions. Mosquera gets up a lot. They've played him as a winger sometimes. Maybe they want to put a little more cover and put a different guy at right back if they anticipate a game that's going to be against an opponent that's going to get after it a bit. But I think Timber fans in that should be pretty optimistic. I don't want to get the Austin crowd too pessimistic, but just having a close look at Portland, I think they got to be pleased about the different areas. And if with some of the guys returning from injury, if they can get a couple more of those dudes, they should be, and I heard about your prediction there, Jeremiah, and I did the same thing. I think I had them 3rd or 4th, and they didn't look like that club that would start that high, but they might get there by season's end.
Yeah. Can you expand on the keeper thing? I'd forgot about that. Like we talked about how much I travel. I happened to be staying at the same hotel that Portland was staying at when they played in Dallas, and Bingham was there. I don't remember if that was the game he went down or not, but like, is Ivicic like a big downgrade or?
No, Ivicic would be the number one. Ivicic
was so good last year.
Yeah, but I know it didn't come out, and there was like, he didn't start some games, and there was some reports of injury, and I would imagine that's the case. But there was something that just didn't click right there, and that opened the door for Bingham. And the Bingham injury was, I want to say, against Seattle. I'll scroll down here. where, or maybe it was the Galaxy. It was the Portland Galaxy game where it was a late flag and Bingham came over and then really messed up his hamstring. And once you saw it, you knew it was bad. Then it was a late flag. It popped up there. And luckily, Ivicic, I think, came in and started really taking the job under his wing at that point. But it wasn't really locked down for any stretch. They have Bingham's not back yet, but so it hasn't been a revolving door there at goalkeeper. But Ivicic was always going to be the number one, but he wasn't really. He left the door open. Whatever he was doing, whether he was injured, whether he was a little disconnected, it opened the door for David Bingham. But that's a big spot for them. If Ivicic can be the guy like last year and log up and eat up those minutes and get some clean sheets, Portland's going to be very good.
So we haven't really done this before, but I think it's maybe an interesting thing to do. You're going to be our guinea pig here, Max. So we want to give some space to the folks we have on to like maybe ask some questions.
Last time I heard that, it didn't end well for me. I'm just kidding.
We know that you guys are covering a lot of teams, traveling around every week. Do you have any thoughts on Austin? Any questions about Austin that you would want to ask us?
Yeah, it's. I talked about Evander for Portland, and it's just like those big signings, the pressure of getting those guys to, hit their spots and be contributors. And I think with Austin, the big storyline has always been Rigoni, Emiliano Rigoni. And I know there's like some displeasure, but I mean, it would appear, he scored a goal. I think that was good this weekend. And you see baby steps towards there, but I wonder what the thought is about Rigoni and where he was and where he's going. And does he feel more like that big signing that can help Austin, because they need that extra player, and obviously with Fagundes out, they need somebody that can help shoulder the burden with Driussi and whoever else up there, Urruti, because goals have been a little bit harder to come by.
I bet you have thoughts on that one, Jeremiah.
I was hoping you would give the more reasonable opinion on this, Landon, first before we did this.
But there's been frustration, I can tell.
Yes. So I'd say, I've been super frustrated. I feel like I speak for a large part of the fan base that is, I guess a little bit like before this last week, there was 15 games with no goal contributions, right? So that was like in his career in Austin, which is super frustrating. And if you go back and look, he has not been really productive on the stat sheet long term. So I still have a lot of questions about like the quality of that investment. And I know Driussi loves him, and there's probably some connection there, but I think a lot of us would like to see a lot more out of him before we're willing to be happy with that. And that's just been one of the big issues with like the designated player signings in general. Like Thomas Pochettino was a designated player the first year.
That was a bad one. Yeah.
That was a bad one.
When we saw that, I go, that's going to be a good signing. And it didn't turn out to be.
Yeah. And so then Rigoni and then Alex Ring has been up and down. It wasn't even going to be a starter this year until Cascante went out. So it gets led to a lot of questions about the roster build in a league where the designated player is the most important thing, right? Like you often live and die by how they succeed or fail.
Yeah, and I'll add to that just saying like I think Rigoni can be a useful piece if he's in the right situation in the right moment. He can be useful. He can be a good player, but I am kind of past the point to ever believing that he's going to be worth the money he's on and how much they paid in that transfer fee. I think that's like done, but I think he can still be useful. And I think this last weekend was a little bit of a sign of how that might look.
Yeah, it's funny because I have some Brazilian friends and they're huge Sao Paulo fans, and Rigoni is, really well regarded there. They love him. They go, Rigoni. And this was a guy who, based on what they tell you, he should be one of the best players in Major League Soccer, and that transition hasn't really clicked for him. And sometimes it takes longer for guys. I think we saw that with Driussi too. It took a little bit, and then he clicked, and now he's got a nice fat new contract. And
yeah, I watched a lot of tape of Rigoni at Sao Paulo, and they just played a lot of like hero balls deep and just had him run onto him. And he can create little moments of magic sometimes. But the style here is so different that I can imagine it's a pretty big culture shock. But yeah,
that's a great observation. That's a great observation, Landon. You can kind of disguise maybe the talent. I still think he's a good player. We got to do it. And then I guess the other one's Jossie Zardes. That has to be a disappointment that he just Jeremiah's nodding his head. I am shocked. I saw that signing in the offseason. I go, this is going to deliver. That's exactly what they need. And no goals.
I think on last year's team he would have delivered, but we're broken for some reason this year. And then I think also he's like maybe gotten old in the last year too. He looks that way a little bit.
Yeah.
And for us, it was hard because we interviewed him right before the season started and like just loved, like he's a beautiful human.
Yeah.
Everything he said about the way he played was like so positive, encouraging. And we were just like ready to love him and ready to have him just like rain goals. And that hasn't turned out. So I think it's like personally disappointing because it's like he's such a good person. Like, and everybody's cheering for him, and he's just not putting it together on the field. And
I'd be patient with both those guys. You can't afford to be patient. I think Austin, finishing second last season was they were very good, but I mean, things really fell in place for them. I mean, when you look at expected goals and all the other stuff, which is not an exact science, but you could see that they exceeded all of that, and they won a playoff round. This was an incredible season to be one of the Final Four teams at the end. And I always knew it was going to be hard to match that. And obviously they haven't come close. But I think it's a club you can be patient with. The forgiving playoffs will allow it. And I think Austin, obviously, not going to finish second, not going to probably compete for a CCL spot or a major trophy in the regular season. But look, when October, November rolls around, and maybe they find those pieces in a summer market. I don't think they have to be big pieces, DP type pieces. Obviously, they're very limited, but you can find some of these guys that can give them depth. Because I think depth, you look at the guys coming off the bench, you're like, you wish you had a little more pop, but that's because of the Cascante situation. Fagundes isn't there, and then some guys aren't performing, that it can get thinned out pretty quick. But it's just like Austin it's frustrating, there's signs that even in these struggles that they are kind of treading above water. And then if things fall well, they could do a lot better than that.
All right. Well, Max, thanks so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Like we said before, you'll be on the call this weekend with Brian Dunseth on Apple TV. And yeah, hopefully one day you'll get down to Austin and get to call a game here for Apple TV. And good luck on the rest of the season. And thanks for joining us. I
don't know why I haven't had an Austin home game. I may have to complain because I love it down there. I have friends in Austin. I have friends in New Braunfels, so I look forward to paying a visit at some point there. But it's a beautiful part of the country, and I'll bring my appetite. And can't. I've been to the Q2. I just haven't called a game from there, and I got to cross that off my list.
Yeah, get your friends in New Braunfels to take you down to the river to float the river. That's a true Texan experience.
Count me in. That's what I'm looking for.
Love it,
Landon. I want people to go, look, that guy's a Texan.
Just say y'all a lot.
Say y'all.
All right.
Don't make fun of Willie or Waylon.
That's right.
Drums.
That's right. All right. Thanks, Max. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Well, you don't need words to tell me things that drive me wild, right out of my brain. Well, you don't say it.
All right. We would like to thank Max Bretos one more time, and we would like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us online to continue the conversation. I am at LVHero87 on Twitter, and Jeremiah is at JBentley_ATX. And then we're at Moon Tower Soccer on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, where you can find the video version of our interview with Max. And then we'd like to encourage you to sign up for the Patreon, which, Jeremiah, I think we're going to try to do a packing party this weekend.
Let's go for it.
And get some stuff out in the next week. So this is kind of like last call. Like we want to, like, there's no like real fair or even way to do this. So we're essentially going to look at like what your level is this week, and that's the reward level you're going to get. And so if you want to move up this week and get a higher level, then you still have a few days to do that. But yeah, that's kind of how we're going to do it. And we want to send everybody who's ever been a member of the Patreon all of these rewards, and we'll do that every year. But that's really the only realistic way we can do it is like, what are you at right now? And that's what we're going to send you. So do with that information what you will, but we're hoping to have your rewards to you pretty soon. And then we'd also like to encourage you to visit the Striker website, where you can get a 30% discount with the code MoonTower23 with a capital M. Jeremiah, what should folks look out for?
Well, Phil West has a great game recap, as he always does, and I would like to call special attention to the headline, which I think kind of sums up the theme of this show, which is there were goals, comma at least, which I feel like is pretty much the perfect description of how the performance versus San Jose went.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. We appreciate everyone joining us once again. We'll be back next week to review the Portland match, and then we'll also preview both the FC Dallas match for MLS competition, and we're also going to preview the U.S. Open Cup match with New Mexico United, and then we'll cover any other Austin FC news that comes up. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente. Oh my God.